Hi, my name's Naveen Vasudeva, and welcome to my new podcast, Have Your Say, sponsored by Cybertalks and Barclays. This is a brand new podcast which is focused around providing a voice to everyone within the cybersecurity community, not just CISOs. I'm a practicing CISO. Even though I have lots of varied opinions about lots of different things, it's always good to listen to what other people have to say and debate those. So I'm really pleased to be joined by Steve Corbett today. Steve is the head of client solutions for Capita, part of the People Solutions division, managing a broad platform of people within Capita, with a focus on cybersecurity at the moment. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining me on this on the podcast. So it would be great if you could give our audience a little bit of background about yourself, and then really, what do we want to talk about today, which would be really good.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thank you for inviting me. So my name's Steve Corbett, head of client solutions for Capita in the People Solutions business. I've been in resourcing, people solutions, and I suppose recruitment for the last 20 years or so. And at the moment, I work for Capita, and in the People Solutions business, it's all about access to skills, how we support our clients with talent, resourcing, managing, training, developing, all the way through to hire to retire. One of the big things we're seeing at the moment is a general skills gap, skills shortage, and how our clients get competitive advantage through the access to skills that they need. One area at the moment is obviously cybersecurity, and we can go into why that is and the story behind that. But just some background, as I say, I've worked in resourcing and recruitment for the last 20 years, cut my teeth in the technology world, and obviously that's been a massive uplift. So through the last 10, 15 years, there's been a massive general technology skills shortage in the UK, software developers and that kind of thing. But I think now the world has gone through, and is still going through, a digital change and transformation. Companies have to evolve, companies have to change or they die. With that, there's obviously the advent of massive data, everybody's online, Internet of Things, you can go on and go on. And obviously the main big thing around that is security of that background and that environment. And I think to bring it to the point where we are today, I think it's probably the worst kept secret in the world that there is just a massive lack of cybersecurity talent worldwide at the moment, especially in the UK as well. And that's in public sector, private sector, government, secure clients. And there's a real big push now in how UK PLC addresses that and brings that new cyber talent through. So excellent. That's what at the moment Capita are focusing on through various initiatives that we can go into.
That's great. So one of the first things I really want to touch on is this concept around the lack of skill within cybersecurity. So when we were talking about doing this podcast together, one of the things we touched on actually was about talent, right? Yep. And whether this concept of a lack of talent within cyber is a real concept, or is it a misguided, misconstrued, or misjudged? So I'd really like your take on whether you really feel in your position, because you've got a good bird's eye view of where that talent pool is. Yep. Whether that's actually a real thing or something that we've just hyped up within the cybersecurity community.
It's a good question, and I think there's two sides of that subject. Is there a real lack of cyber skills out there in the market at the moment? Yes, there is, and there's a few reasons for that in terms of going back through the education system. What are schools, what are colleges, what are universities doing for that? Are they geared up to provide the digital skills of the future that we need? But then on the other side of the argument, there are very bright, capable people out there, and I think it's just a case of how those people are attracted, onboarded, trained and developed coming into cybersecurity roles. Because I think at the moment, companies have fallen foul of having a boxed requirement, going out to market, trying to mirror that boxed requirement with a boxed CV, and tick box exercise in terms of certifications and that kind of thing, and bringing them into the business. And predominantly we see kind of the mid-level sometimes fail in terms of being successful because they just don't have the all-round skills. So there's two sides to that argument, and many have debated the whys and wherefores of both.
So do you think that the UK government is doing enough to promote cybersecurity at a base educational level? So within primary schools, within secondary schools, within colleges, universities, so on and so forth. So we're probably quite far behind the likes of Russia, China.
Yeah.
Let's use North Korea as another example,
Yeah.
because they're training their young in digital cyber technologies, coding, in a very aggressive way.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't seem to be doing anything near that. And we also understand the hostile environments in which they want to operate from a nation state perspective, but actually they have mobilization of very young capabilities and young coding practices. Where are we failing as a country in not being able to put this at a very base level?
I think you're right. I think the UK, not necessarily the government, but the whole education system is probably a few years behind the people you mentioned.
Sure.
I think within schools at the moment and universities, we're still on that curriculum of very traditional, classical subjects, which are needed, obviously. But now the world is exploding within this digital change and transformation culture. The digital skills of tomorrow are more than the classical and traditional subjects we're teaching at the moment.
Sure.
So how do we make ready our future talent in terms of those digital skills? Or we've got to drag it back, as you say, to school level, secondary school level, even primary school level. At the moment, there are very few secondary schools, let's pick on secondary schools that teach computing as core modules.
Mm-hmm.
They do a very broad how to network a printer and all that, that kind of thing, and the old kind of games we used to have fun at and all that kind of stuff. But even at GCSE level, there's very few that put coding and cybersecurity as mandatory on those, compulsory on those GCSEs.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a gap there. Going on to university, we spoke earlier on before when we met. Universities and their degrees and the computing degrees are good, but they're very, very broad. And cybersecurity is just a small part of that.
Yeah.
So does that equip people coming out of university to go and get a cyber job? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting better. It's getting better. The likes of NCSC, Cyber First, is now coming through and pushing down into those skills to promote the cyber world. But an interesting point you said earlier about the North Koreas and the Russias in terms of that nation state, in terms of the murky world. We're all in that now. Whether we like it or not, we are all in that. And UK PSC and the government and UK as a whole has to protect itself. So we have to have these digital and cyber skills coming through. We have to.
You actually have friendly allies that produce malicious
malicious
code.
Well, let's not yeah, but of course we do.
Yeah.
So we have to stand alone first of all, and we have to protect the UK as a whole.
So touching back around the schooling education question. So if I go back to when I was at school, I was learning things like Pascal and Fortran and C++ and Visual Basic, which are all pretty much irrelevant today in the way that you code. Yeah. And as I was sort of inferring, I never went to university. I don't have a degree. I tried it. I was probably too busy doing other things than getting an education. Yeah. But it hasn't stopped my career path within cyber, right? So that's the traditional route would be, learning something at school, going to university, and then, landing a cybersecurity role in some way, shape, or form. What about the non-traditional part? So, people that are neurodiverse, that are on the spectrum, that, like me, are dyslexic or dyspraxic or things like that. So how would they approach a career in cybersecurity? Because I think there are a lot of talented people in that space, but I don't necessarily think organizations are set up to cater for those individuals.
You're right, and there's been some good ground made in terms of those, call them minority groups, in terms of people on the spectrum. They come with some fantastic ideas, some fantastic attitudes, creative thinking out the box that were never really focused on before. Again, going back to this tick box exercise, degree, qualifications, certificate, blah, blah, never looked over this way in terms of this pool of candidates over here. But it goes further than that. It goes into, women in technology. It goes into vets coming out of the army who've got fantastic skills. It's got people obviously on the spectrum, minorities, people coming back to work. There's a massive pool that just hasn't really been tapped into at the moment. There's been good ground now made up in that, and I think it's an area we need to push on with, and then bring the but as you say, I don't think companies were set up to do that.
Well, I think they find it challenging. So, especially with people that are neurodiverse.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is if you're going to employ someone with, different capabilities, they may be really good at a very technical level. They may be very good at a process level, but they may not necessarily be good at human interaction and capability. The question is, how do organizations then adjust? Because from my personal experience and what I've seen with others as well is that organizations always talk about hiring the best and the most qualified and the most this, that, and the other. Yeah. Now, if you get someone that's extremely good but slightly doesn't fit your mold of what you think is, your corporate value, your corporate this, your corporate that, you're going to either ignore them or you're going to try to get them in and mold them to be something that they're not. So how would you advise organizations to start changing the way they think about representation and diversity in that regard?
Yeah, that's a big question, a big topic, and it goes on to the traditional recruitment candidate model has changed massively. Just talking broadly, the whole recruitment world has changed now. The new bright young things coming through don't want the things maybe that me and you wanted when we first started. Do they want a permanent job? Probably not anymore. They want to come in.
So it's a lot more transactional, right?
A lot more transactional, transient workforce.
Yeah.
They might want to do 6 months here, 12 months there. They might want to travel. They want to come back. They want to have a couple of roles on at the same time. If their company and their company values doesn't suit them, they will not apply.
Yeah.
Companies have got to stop being arrogant to think they can put an advertisement out there and they're going to get loads of application. It's changed. The world's changed. You've got to appeal to different subgroups now, and you've got to be more flexible in the workforce. Obviously, there's the whole working from home. There's all that kind of thing that's coming out, which is great. But it goes back to EVP, employment brand proposition, value proposition. What can you offer talent now? How are you going to stretch and flex to offer talent what they want? Because there is a war for talent.
So do you think within the cybersecurity community itself that we're doing enough to truly understand what a good career path is within cyber? How someone can come in, regardless of whether you've gone through traditional education or whether you're coming in a non-traditional route? Probably not the right way to explain it, but do you think that we've got a good sense of how one can progress in cyber, and B, what do they need to do to be able to do it? So could you talk to me a little bit about the Cybersecurity Academy that you run and encounter? Because I'd be interested to know how that channels through progression and...
Yeah, so taking a step back, I think the companies that will survive in this new age have to change the way they're set up, and they have to become learning organisations and learning cultures. So now the access to talent and retaining that talent, you have to offer something in terms of continually training, that learning journey, developing people, reskilling people as well. There's a massive workforce out there that does need reskilling, and the best companies and those companies that will survive are the companies that can cater for that. But in terms of the Cybersecurity Academy that Capita running at the moment, we looked at the market and what the market needs at the moment, and we've come up with we think is a fairly good solution. I'll quickly go through the stage if that's okay. So it's a traditional recruit model at the start. So we go out and we recruit some of the best STEM graduates, diverse communities, minorities, ex-vets, and we permanently employ them within Capita on a permanent salary within Capita. A lot of these guys we try and bring in with some kind of computing degree or cyber kind of qualification, because that's the base level. But then after that, we bring them into our own academy, and we've got trainers all around the country, and we put them through about 10 to 14 weeks of specific cyber training. Now, obviously, the cyber curriculum is vast. So
it's enormous, yeah.
I don't think anybody can train a cybersecurity professional in that time.
Yeah.
But we give them that base level, and obviously the clients we engage with, if they have proprietary systems or they want them trained in something specific, we can design a course to fit that. What we do then, when they're deployable, and sorry, take a step back, and good point you made earlier. When we train them on the technical side of things, we also train them on the soft side, so communication skills, team leading, how to interact, because I think one mistake that the industry made was recruiting a young apprentice or a young graduate with computing degree or an interest in cyber or an apprenticeship, bringing them into a company and going, right, there you go, and then sticking them in the corner of the sock, and they just failed because they didn't know how to walk over to
Yeah.
an IT director or a head of risk or something to ask for anything or to build a report or to run a meeting. So that's an area that we focus on there in terms of the soft skills. So then once they're deployable on a client site, we deploy them onto the client site, onto a live project. But when we do that, we also then, after 3 months, 6 months probation, we then also lock them into a cybersecurity master's degree. So we sponsor them, we pay for a cybersecurity master's degree. So they've got that continuous learning journey through that client. So it's theory, it's practice. Capita mentors them as well. So they're released 1 day a week to go to the Cyber Masters. So you've got that continuing learning journey of theory, practice, and also live environments as well. So it's a constant development journey. We also wrap that round with welfare managers as well. So we do the reviews, we do the HR side of things, we look at coaching points, mentoring. So hopefully what that provides is not just a young person, but a professional person who's got a massive passion in cybersecurity. They've got the base skills, but they've also got the new theory that's coming out as well. Because, as you know, cyber is a constantly evolving world.
Yep.
One certification is dead tomorrow. One piece of technology is dead tomorrow. So you've got to have that constant learning journey.
So do you put a lot of weight on certifications within Capita? So I've got a different view on certifications. I don't necessarily believe that certifications, at the end of the day, certifications is just a business,
Yes.
right? So, somebody's making money from,
Yes.
Claiming you could be certified in X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Do you think, so I've got a couple of questions there.
Sure.
Number one, I think the Academy sounds great. So one of the questions I have out of that in terms of sort of that boot camp focus, what is the success criteria in terms of those individuals that join the organisation? How long do they actually retain them for?
Yep.
Because you find with a lot of organisations like Capita, come in, people learn, people jump, right? Yeah, right. And they're waiting to get that second step in terms of certification and or degree, right, at somebody else's dime, and then go do something different. So I'll be keen to understand what that kind of looks like. And then sort of my second question is, are you certifying them up to the hilt so that they become attractive to the client, but anyone can pass an exam, the practical experiences, and if they do something first. So the sub question then is, do you try them out within your own environment first before you put them on a client site?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. What we don't do, and I think mistakes have been made before, is get a young person, a consultant, apprentice, whatever you want to call him, sheep dip them in 12 weeks of nothingness and then put them on the client site, because predominantly they fail. So within Capita is a massive organisation, 65,000 people within Capita, different business units. We've also got our own cyber resilience programme down the middle of down the spine. So you're absolutely right. They come to us with degrees or qualifications or that kind of thing. We bring them onto the boot camp, and then we deploy them internally within Capita to get that live project experience. So that's usually around 3 to 6 months of rotation around the Capita business. So they do get hands-on, live.
That's great.
We think it's essential, because what we don't want to do is just put them on site without any theory.
So there's a risk there, because I've been in the position where, being a CISO myself, and then pulling services from the likes of Capita and other organisations, to discover that individuals have been put through that bootcamp process, and then literally deployed onto a client site. They lack the knowledge, the experience to engage, and actually what organisations have done then is set these individuals up for failure, right? And also then distracts them from wanting to continue within cybersecurity. So you have quite a significant young burnout rate, as much as you do have I want to join this profession. So that's an interesting challenge. So in terms of this certification question, I'm just really interested, because I just don't believe that certification holds much value.
I agree. As I say, I've been in the recruitment world for 20 years. You get a CV sometimes of certifications as long as your arm. And contractors who every certification under the sun. They've got a few years' experience, but then you put them on site and the feedback is awful. And you're kind of thinking, well, how can that be? Why is that? But so as we say, certifications is a piece of paper. And especially in the cyber world, it's that live project, SOC, threat analysis, reaction. How you're going to work is that live experience that wins out. So if somebody comes to us with absolutely no certifications whatsoever, but they've got the aptitude, then that's fine. We can train them and work with those people, and sometimes they're the best candidates to put on client sites. So I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, I suppose the challenge is what's the alternative, right? And these certification bodies have made a pretty good global business for themselves, in making themselves the standard of what good cybersecurity practice is, I suppose.
Yeah, well, that's another interesting point. Because in the whole cyber world, what is the industry standard? Cyborgs come out, okay, great, but what is what are we working towards? What's the benchmark? I think that's still to be explored within cyber as well. And
it's a very interesting one. I mean, if you think about ISO 27001, actually that's a cybersecurity or what is it? 7799 BS7, which was the original one, which actually came out of a oil and gas company back in the 80s, right? Yeah. Now you've got NIST, which is trying to put focus on something different. Yeah. So and I've noticed a trend now with nationalization of cybersecurity laws and processes and procedural requirements. That actually it's very inward looking. So you're going to get very local dominated cybersecurity practices, and as you said, digital world. Ever expanding, becoming rather complicated. Yeah. So, looking towards the future, then, one of the key things that I think the premise of our conversation has been this lack of talent, right? So, what are you guys really doing now to help bridge that gap? What is it unique about some of the things that you're focused on and the things you're looking at that's going to help us bridge that gap? Because you've got a pretty good view of where the talent is. Yeah. And I suppose the second question then is, how successful is that?
Good question. Good question. I don't think I'd be arrogant enough to sit here and say we've got the silver bullet. I don't think there is a silver bullet out there at the moment. The technology world, the digital world, the cyber world is ever increasing, getting bigger. The pace of it is tremendous. So I don't think anybody's going to have a silver bullet. In terms of what we're doing at Capita, we've got various businesses and various specialists within the Capita and in the cyber world. So the Cybersecurity Academy is getting massive traction at the moment. In terms of candidates, I don't think there is another place where they can get training, cybersecurity masters, live experience, a job, a decent salary, and rotating around different companies getting that experience. So that there is a great package for candidates.
Sure.
In terms of clients, what they get is obviously their future talent. I think going back to your original question, what do companies have to do? I think there's a big debate around buy, borrow, or build talent now. I think the traditional model was buy. If there's a problem or if there's a gap, right, what can we do? We can get permanent, skill shortage, contract. Right, let's go and get a contractor. I'm now going to mention the dirty world, the IR35 that's hit the market, which unfortunately is decimating the market at the moment. It's causing major problems. So that pool of talent there, we generally don't know what's going to happen in terms of the contract.
So do you think, it's a really, really good topic actually and on sidebar, but do you really, IR35 is going to bring lots of complicated issues into the workplace. And actually one of the things I've seen some of your competitors doing now is to say, if you're a CISO, please come and join us as an executive partner, associate partner. Yep. There's a land grab going on for people that work in an interim space to come suddenly go work, in a full-time environment. Or the other problem I'm going to predict is that you'll just have a mass exodus of very talented, highly skilled individuals not wanting to work in the UK because the attractiveness of how they were working has just disappeared. So are you finding that sort of top tier level now is sort of disappearing, or are they joining the ranks, and where are you sort of seeing it land?
Good question, and as we sit here now, it's a grey area. The market doesn't know what to do. The government's brought out IR35 in the public sector. That caused problems and projects to grind to a halt, and there was an issue there. Now it's in the private sector, and with the blanket bans of IR35 that some of the big banks are doing, other organisations are doing, it's kind of put the brakes on that interim contracting world. So at the moment, Capita offers a couple of solutions. So the Cybersecurity Academy is one. Where these guys come in on a small day rate. And to go back to one of your original questions, we deploy them on client sites, and we're seeing cycles of around 12 months to 2 years.
Right, okay.
That. After that period, the client can take them on permanently in terms of their payroll. So that's working well because that builds their future talent internally, builds their team.
So is that kind of like a talent as a service kind of offering?
Talent as a service, yeah, it is. Another model that we're getting a lot of traction for now is employed resource model. So similar to what you said. Some contractors are saying, well, okay, that vehicle, that market is no longer attractive to me, so I have to go permanent. But we still want the variety. So we recruit them at Capita on a permanent salary, a really good permanent salary, I should say. I hasten to add. But then, deploy them on client sites so that they still have that rotational work-life balance around client sites. Not all contractors want to do that. Some contractors will just bench themselves because they're career contractors, they've got some money in their bank, so they'll just bench themselves and they're just waiting to see what happens. Others will work outside of the UK. Others will just simply work from home and take a couple of gigs. There's lots of different things happening in the market at the moment, but one of the big things Capita is supporting clients with is that route to talent and that access to skills. And there are a couple of solutions that work.
So just in my own CISO network, I've seen a decline in people accepting full-time roles within the UK, a massive interest and intrigue around the Middle East because Saudi's opening up its borders and commercial environments, especially for UK-based contractors. Dubai's been doing it for a number of years, Bahrain, Oman. Big cybersecurity markets, and will attract all of that talent tax-free. So there's there's another challenge there.
And do you know what? I'm sure we don't have time to get into it, but I'll just say one thing: the government has to be quite careful in terms of what it's doing at the moment around the flexible contract contingent off payroll workforce, because that workforce for many years has delivered a lot of projects. There's a lot of skills, there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of commitment within that body of people. You take that out, the government now is saying they need to level up, and they're promising infrastructure, they're promising projects, they're promising NHSX, they're blah, 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 all that kind of thing. I just urge the government to just have a little bit of caution around how they implement it, because if that workforce comes out of the market, it's going to leave a massive gap.
Which we're seeing. I think there has to be some empirical data to start backing that up. But actually, my general sense of where my peer group is heading, come April, they don't really want to be stuck in that position if they're suddenly now having to pay X, for under IR35, and there's some really great articles being published by career contractors about the benefits of doing it X way or that way, right? I think look, we're never going to solve this equation today. It's a broad subject. So really just sort of summarising your own personal view around talent, what are the sort of three things that you would be saying to potential candidates about where we are in cyber, and B, to existing, your existing cybersecurity workforce about the potentials they have in terms of career progression and retention and things like that. And actually, if anyone's interested in positions, if there are these career contractors that are looking for new roles or new opportunities within Capita, who can they go in contact and speak to, things like that?
No problem. I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. It really isn't. It's a brave new world, as it were. The cybersecurity world is massive, and it's going to keep on developing. There is a real need for talent. There are multiple roles out there. The vehicles in terms of what those roles are, contract perm, is yet to be worked out and discussed, but they are out there. So I would fully encourage, new talent coming into the market, coming out of university, even before university, to get into cyber. It's cylindrical, isn't it? I mean, the world went IT mad, so everybody got into general IT. It's now all about cyber. Every company is going through digital change and transformation. Cybersecurity, CISOs now sit at the board table, and that's great. That's fantastic. So it's a massive subject. So I would urge any candidates to get into cybersecurity at school. Cyber First are doing brilliant things, so I encourage people to link in with those guys. Find me on LinkedIn, drop me an email. I've got a load of associates at Capita, like Alex Emerson, who you know well as well in that recruitment space. There is still a massive market for niche cybersecurity recruiters, and the old black book will never go away. it will never go away. How we match talent. But the Capita cybersecurity, that kind of model is now getting a lot of traction working. So there's still a lot of potential. You touched on earlier, CISO as a service. So we're seeing a lot of heavyweight big CISOs now But also our whole goal is to support UK PLC and partner the government and the private sector to just help develop this and make the UK secure.
So do you think, I mean, just touching on this very last point, that the gap between public and private partnerships is still quite low in trying to push this whole agenda forward?
Yes, it is. It is. Obviously, historically, public sector and private sector have run at different paces.
Yeah.
Of course they have. But I think those two industries now, or those two sectors are more aligned. Public sector have now got private influence and private pace within those companies, so they have to react and they have to build. Private sector will always push the boundaries. It's a little bit faster paced, but those two sectors have now come together and aligned, so they have to work together. And I'm pleased to say they are working together. They're swapping war stories, they're swapping tips, they're swapping talent. It's getting better.
Perfect.
It's getting better.
Any last words?
No, as I say, the outlook is good. The cybersecurity world is growing. We'll always need good talent. So give me a call at Capita.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Steve.
It's a pleasure.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.